الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين أما بعد فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله من مات ولم يعرف إمام زمانه مات ميتة جاهلية صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
We continue with our discussions on Al-Qayyim Al-Alim Muhammad. We are doing the part 3 of the discussion today, and if you recall, we were talking about the events, the geopolitical events and the historical events that were leading up to the Ghayba of the Imam. And from last week's discussion, we stopped around whilst discussing the events surrounding the coming of the Abbasid Caliphate. Thank you. Surrounding the coming of the Abbasid Caliphate, and we want to continue from there today. So at the time of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam, there was this tug of war going on between the Umayyad regime and the Abbasid regime. And the Abbasids at that time were trying to have numerous meetings with the Imam to plan and overthrow the Umayyads. However, we discussed the fact that they had ulterior motives. They did not claim, they claimed to do this in the name of returning the caliphate back to the Ahlul Bayt. And the slogan that the Abbasids used at that time was the fact that the Khilafat, the right to the Khilafat belonged to Ali ibn Abi Talib, and we want to take that right back and hand it to the descendants of Ali. But Imam had recognized their ultimate aims, and although they claimed to rebel under that banner, the Imam knew exactly what they want. And therefore the Imam maintained a very safe distance from them and behaved in a way as to not support them actively, nor to oppose them openly. And some of the Shia at that point in time very painfully failed to recognize what was happening. A very good example is a personality or a person by the name of Abu Salama al-Khallal. He was one of the staunchest Shia of Ahlul Bayt. He was one of the biggest supporters of the sixth Imam. But he failed to recognize what was happening, and out of emotional involvement, he sided with the Abbasids. By the time Abu Salama realized what is happening, he had already reached into the prominent circles of the Abbasid regime, and to turn back was difficult. The Abbasids, on the other hand, time and again tried to include the Imam and some of his very close people into their movement. But Imam stayed at a safe distance and warned those who were close to him to do the same. Simultaneously, the Imam also realized that time was a limiting factor, and therefore the sixth Imam did three things. Number one, he continued to teach various sciences in his universities and produced authorities and ulama of the highest caliber in their respective fields. Secondly, Imam as-Sadiq formed an organization known as Tanzim al-Sirri or Al-Wikala, and this is a secret organization that Imam formed, comprising of these authorities that he had produced in that respective field, the Wukala, which is the plural form of wakil. And after producing this Wukala of that caliber, Imam sent them all over the Islamic Ummah. And thirdly, the Imam informed his Shia of that present time that it was sufficient for an Imam to gain spiritual leadership only. Political leadership would only be gained when the general masses had enough ma'rifah of the Imam of their time. You see the limiting factor here. This is one of the main reasons the 12th Imam is not reappearing, because we do not yet have the ma'rifah that is actually required for us to be able to accept the 12th Imam. So one very important principle that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam adopted at that point in time is the principle of secrecy. The main reason to adopt secrecy and taqiyya was to protect Islam as well as its followers and to protect the institution of Imam. The sixth Imam, Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, says, Taqiyya is an important part of my faith and that of my ancestors. Imam encouraged it. It is very important to know what to speak and when to speak. For the tongue, it's a mere piece of flesh, but it can cause immense damage and destruction more than the most advanced weapons that we have. If you look at the various prayers, the dua and the ziyarah that we have, Imam has employed taqiyya in that. A very good example is ziyarat of Ashura. There are some names which are mentioned. Abu Sufyan is mentioned, Muawiyah is mentioned, Yazid is mentioned, Umar ibn Sa'ad ibn Ziyad, these people are mentioned, Shimr is mentioned. There are some names which are not mentioned. Tabarra has a place and time, Tawalla has a place and time, because there is a ripple effect. Imam curtailed his meetings and only met a few people. Gradually, as time went on, Imam slowly reduced the number of people he could meet, and at the same time he reduced what he could say openly to the masses. In essence, the training for the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib to learn and live in the Ghayba of their Imam of their time had begun. Let's have a brief discussion or a synopsis of Tanzim Sirri, or the Wikala organization. As mentioned, this organization consisted of people who were highly trained and learned. These were the staunch Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib, true and khalis Muslims and mu'mineen of that time, whose main aim was to protect the religion of Islam by protecting the teachings of the Holy Prophet of Islam, the teachings of the Holy Quran, and protecting the institution of Imam. People like Ali ibn Mahziyar, Muhammad bin Abi Umair, Usman bin Isa, Abdullah ibn Hajjaj, etc. and etc. They comprise the core of Al-Wikala. They would do this work whilst disguising themselves in various ways. Example, some of them were merchants and they were selling butter in the market. They would answer the fiqh mas'ala of the Shia of that time while selling butter. The Abbasid soldiers would be roaming around the markets looking for anything suspicious, and these people, whilst doing that transaction, would reply to the questions and would collect khums, etc. and etc. There are some who were forced to move far away from Arabia. Others with their families ascended into the mountains and stayed in the mountains away from the civilization in order to protect their faith. Yet there were some who acted insane. One name comes out to me in bold: Bahlul. Sayyid Ammar Naqshwani in his lecture gives a beautiful description of Bahlul. He says Bahlul was the alim of the ulama of Ahlul Bayt. But imagine the sacrifice that this gentleman did, acting insane. Is it easy to act insane? Is it easy to wear torn clothes and ragged clothes around, hold the stick and run around with the stick being beaten by the people of the city? We can't do it for half a day. This man did it for years to come, just so that he could protect the religion of Islam. And he used to teach, he used that as a platform to educate the masses, as an opportunity to teach. One very good example was when Bahlul climbed onto the throne of Harun al-Rashid and started jumping up and down. And the soldiers of Harun caught him, took him off the throne and beat him up. And when Harun enters the courtyard, Bahlul is crying. Incidentally, Bahlul is Harun's cousin. So Harun inquires from Bahlul, why are you crying? And he says, I'm crying because I was on the throne. So Harun says, so did they hurt you? Bahlul says, no, but I'm not crying for myself. They did hurt me, yes. But I'm crying for you. He says, why are you crying for me? And Bahlul gives a very good reply. He says, I climbed on your throne for a few minutes and your soldiers did this to me. You are sitting on the throne of Ahlul Bayt. What will Allah do to you on the Day of Judgment? So this is how Bahlul used, this is the opportunities Bahlul used to give Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar, to do tabligh to the people. On the other hand, because of the secrecy and taqiyya, Imams did not openly disclose who would succeed them. They would only let a few people know. They expected, as per their instructions, that the Shia should have the ma'rifah and the Shia would be keeping themselves abreast with the latest developments in the Islamic world. It is expected. It is our duty to do that. The wukala connected the lay Shia masses to the Imam. They acted as a wasila. During this time, the collection of funds like zakat and khums and the answering of questions and queries regarding issues of jurisprudence, fiqh masail and other issues were done by these wukala. The Shias were encouraged to acquire ilm and gain influential and prominent positions within the Abbasid government. Before I continue, let's recite the salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
At this time, because of the persecution, the sixth Imam sent away a large proportion of his family to places, faraway places like Khurasan. Hence, if you go to Iran now, every town or city will have a shrine of Imam Zada or Imam Zadeh. This was because the sixth Imam sent away his family. The Abbasids, on the other hand, had gained the Khilafat and had already started their malice. They could not openly slaughter the Imams because of their claim, the reason why they took the Caliphate. So they decided to assassinate the Imams in a concealed way, to poison them. This was the reason why 5th, 6th, 7th, these Imams were all poisoned. The Abbasids have decided to increase their surveillance now, to increase their level of spying, and their spies had penetrated right into the core of the family of the Imams. After the martyrdom of the sixth Imam alayhi salam by Al-Mansur, the Abbasid Caliph, another problem emerged. More divisions and more sects. Due to the unavoidable adoption of the policy of secrecy and taqiyya, as well as the ignorance and greed for the materialistic world by the Shia, some of the Shia, two things happened. The era of the 6th and 7th Imam saw the emergence of numerous divisions and sects. And secondly, these sects laid claim to their leader being the Hujjah, or they believed in a future Mahdi who was different from the Mahdi depicted in the prophetic traditions. I'll give you a very brief synopsis of the divisions that formed at that point in time. So, the Fatiyah sect. The Fatiyah sect followers believed in Abdullah ibn Ja'far as-Sadiq to be their Imam, the brother of Musa al-Qadim alayhi salam. And prominent Shia personalities who were companions of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam became followers of Abdullah ibn Ja'far as-Sadiq and deviated from mainstream. The Musawiyah sect were followers of Muhammad ibn Ismail ibn Ja'far as-Sadiq and believed him to be the Mahdi. Then we have the Ismaili sect who believed in the imamat of Ismail ibn Ja'far as-Sadiq, and they believed that Ismail was declared dead in order to protect his life. That was a false declaration. And he is the Mahdi and he is in Ghayba. Then there was the Waqifa sect who believed that Musa al-Qadim alayhi salam was the Mahdi, and therefore they deviated from the straight path. Were these divisions something new? Is this the first time that these divisions were happening? The answer is no. If you look back in history, there was a group after the era of Imam Hussein alayhi salam that believed, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, that believed in Muhammad ibn Hanafiya to be the Mahdi and the Qaim. Then there were the Zaydi Shias who believed in Zayd, son of the fourth Imam alayhi salam. And then there was a group known as the Yazidis. This is not the same group that's there in Iraq now, the Izdis. This group, the Yazidis, they believed that Yazid ibn Muawiyah la'natullah had ascended into the heavens like Nabi Isa and would come back later as the Mahdi. And there were the Baqiris, etc., and so on and so forth. So these divisions happened from before. But at this time of the 6th and 7th Imam, they flourished even more because of the adoption of secrecy. So when the 7th Imam got his imamah, he was in a weak position because a lot of the Shia had deviated. So his following was very minimal. However, because of his efforts and the efforts of Al-Wikala and the fact that many followers of the Fatiyah sect reverted back to the 7th Imam, once they realized the truth, his position became stronger. At that time, the Abbasid ruler was Mahdi. Mahdi was the son of Al-Mansur. Al-Mansur was very smart or very cunning. He realized the confusion that is happening at that point in time, and therefore he named his son Mahdi. So people get even more confused. So Mahdi, son of Mansur, got the Khilafat at that time. He did not like the 7th Imam's position becoming stronger. And therefore he had the Imam arrested. But at this point in time, there were negotiations between the 7th Imam and Mahdi. And the 7th Imam pledged that he would not take up an armed rebellion against the Abbasid Caliphate. And after receiving that pledge, Mahdi freed the 7th Imam. The 7th Imam believed that armed rebellion against tyrant rulers now was a task that solely rested on the shoulders of Imam al-Mahdi ajjallahu ta'ala faraj. That was the belief of the 7th Imam. After the Abbasid ruler Mahdi's death came Hadi, another Abbasid ruler. During his period, the Shia grew in strength and in numbers, and their underground activities increased. Their main form of communication was the Hajj pilgrimage. So in Mina, when we spent 2 or 3 days, two or three nights in Mina, so at that time, the Shia used to go from one tent to another tent to communicate with each other, find out what's happening, to get their questions answered by the wukala, etc. and etc. Hadi started becoming very uncomfortable with the strength of the Shia, and he began devising plans to arrest Al-Qadim alayhi salam. But before he could execute that plan, he died. The one who then ascended the throne of the Abbasid Caliphate proved to be a great terror and did immense damage to Islam, Harun al-Rashid.
They say Rashid, it's not Rashid.
Harun?
Yes, his name is Rashid, but we say he is not Rashid because Rashid is very pious.
We will just say Harun.
Yeah.
The spying activities of Abbasids increased during the time of Harun. Al-Qadim was subsequently arrested on trumped up charges of having stored weapons in his house to start an armed rebellion, and then began the 14, or in some books 20, long years of imprisonment of Al-Qadim alayhi salam. He was moved from one prison to another prison, from the prisons of Baghdad to the prisons of Basra and back to the prisons of Baghdad. At this time, a silent massacre was happening on the Shia, especially the Imam's family. Historians attest to the fact that the minimum number of people Harun massacred was 60 Sadat, 60 Sayyids from the Imam's family. The Imam was subsequently poisoned and martyred in prison. During this time, however, 7th Imam's followers succeeded in getting some of the staunchest followers, and they managed to get into some of the top-notch government positions of the Abbasid Caliphate, particularly 2 departments, the office of the chief minister and the mail service, the royal mail of the Abbasid Caliphate. Why? Look at how clever Imam is. He wanted his people to get into the mail service so that communication between Shia could even be more easier. Ali ibn Yaqtin, a very close follower of the seventh Imam, worked as Harun's prime minister. And Ja'far ibn Muhammad al-Ash'ath, and after him his son Muhammad, they were the heads of the male service of the Abbasid Caliphate. They were a great help during the most difficult times of the Shia. After the martyrdom of the seventh Imam, his representatives in some places, especially Egypt, had amassed huge funds for zakat and khums. Seventh Imam, when he became strong, his followers were in Egypt and in the Maghrib as well, Libya, Tunisia, etc., etc. So his representatives in Egypt had a lot of khums and zakat money. Unfortunately, they had already put some of that money to their personal use. And therefore, because of this and the greed to keep the rest of the funds with themselves, the Waqifa sect was formed. They claimed that no, the seventh Imam has not been martyred. He is alive and in Ghayba. So now we are his representatives and this khums stays with us. We will give it to the Imam when he reappears again. At that time, Al-Amin and Al-Ma'mun were fighting amongst themselves for the seat of the Khilafah. Ma'mun was based in Marv, in Persia, in Khurasan, and he had very good influence on the military commanders of Persia at that time, whilst Al-Amin's base was Baghdad. Ma'mun forcefully summons Imam al-Rida alayhi salam to Khurasan, miles and miles away from Medina, and he did this for three reasons. Firstly, to stop the Imam from spreading knowledge and from spreading the truth and from educating the masses. Secondly, to keep Imam close to him so he could monitor him properly. And thirdly, he gave Imam the false position of deputy Khalifa, so as to gain support from the Shia, who took everything for face value and failed to recognize what was happening. Time and again, history is teaching us one thing. We Shia have to be clever. Our 12th Imam does not want dumb Shias. He wants clever Shias. We should be aware of what is happening around us. We should not take everything for face value. This is what happened in history. He managed to overcome his brother Amin and ultimately got what he wanted: the supreme seat of the Abbasid Khilafat. The 8th Imam by this time had already got a big following, especially in the cities of Qum and other parts of the Islamic world, including Kufa. He had already appointed his special wukala in these places, who answered the fiqh masail and collected funds of khums and zakat and other funds as well, and sent it to the Imam regularly. The 8th Imam continued his work and continued preaching to the masses about the coming of Al-Qaim of Al-Muhammad. The Ismailis at that time had already flourished. They took advantage of the confusion and they had already flourished as well. They continued to try and revolt against the Abbasid regime and to destroy the other Alawites. Who are the other Alawites? The Shia and the Zaydis. So the Ismailis were trying to work against the Shia and the Zaydis, particularly the Shia, because they saw the Shia as a big threat to their progress. However, after the Battle of Faq, the Battle of Faq was a battle that happened at the time of the Abbasid ruler Mahdi. So there was a group of rebels called the Hassanid rebels. They started an armed rebellion against the Abbasid Caliphate. And Mahdi, the Abbasid ruler, sent a huge army and there was a brutal massacre. So the Ismailis learned what happened in the Battle of Faq. So after the Battle of Faq, they decided that armed rebellion was not the option. So they were very cautious. The Ismailis also perceived the Islamic Sharia as a limiting factor to achieve their ultimate aim. And therefore their leaders adopted two policies. Firstly, they said, we will step outside the bounds of the Sharia because you know what? We want the ultimate good for Islam. So it's okay to ignore the Sharia. This is what is happening now. There is no punishment in the Quran for homosexuality. This is exactly history repeating itself. So this is number one, what Ismailis did. Secondly, the Ismaili leaders allowed their followers to commit silent, direct and targeted assassinations of the Shia leaders. So these Ismailis continued to rebel against the Abbasids, but in a silent, gradual and stepwise fashion. They were very smart and clever. After the 8th Imam was martyred, the 9th and 10th Imam faced a problem that was similar in both their cases. Both these Imams became Imams at a small age, at a tender age. The 9th Imam at the age of 7 and 8 years, and after the martyrdom of the 9th Imam, the 10th Imam became Imam at the age of 6 years. A significant portion of the Shia turned away during this time because they could not digest the fact that a small child would become an Imam. The Tanzim al-Sirri, or the Wikala organization, got more developed during this time, and Imam's agents were spread out across the Islamic world, from Ahwas to Hamadan to Sistan, Ray, Basra, you name it. During the time of the 9th Imam, the Abbasid Khalifa realized what is happening. Imam al-Jawad was subsequently arrested and poisoned, according to some historians, by his wife al-Fadl, who was incidentally the daughter of the Abbasid Khalifa Ma'mun. The 10th Imam, Imam al-Hadi, continued his work to develop the Wikala. And some Shia now also entered into the Abbasid army. This success was very short-lived, because now a man sat on the seat of the Khilafat who was known to have caused the greatest harm to the religion of Islam, al-Mutawakkil al-Abbasi. Up until now, the level of taqiyya was so high that the general public did not know who was the 10th Imam. For some people, the 10th Imam was in Ghayba. Mentioning his name in public at that point in time, according to Shi'i fiqh, was haram. You could not mention the name of the 10th Imam in public in order to protect the Imam. So Mutawakkil did three things. He launched a thorough investigation to look for the Imam and to see who is behind the Wikala organization. Secondly, he destroyed all main communication centers of the Wikala. One of the main communication centers was the holy shrine of Abu Abdullah Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Mutawakkil is known to have attacked Karbala more than 40 times. 40 times. And he started the law that whoever wants to do ziyarat of Abu Abdullah should have one of his limbs amputated. And thirdly, he banned all social interaction of the people with the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He wrote a letter to his wazir, to his ambassador in Egypt, and he gives three instructions. Number one, no Alawite could be given an estate or be allowed to ride a horse or move from one province to another province. Secondly, no Alawite was permitted to possess more than one slave. Thirdly, if there was a conflict between an Alawite and a non-Alawite, then the judge was instructed to first listen to the argument of the non-Alawite and give his judgment without listening to the Alawite. These were the laws of Mutawakkil. Imam al-Hadi was also arrested in Medina, and with his immediate family he was sent to Samarra and placed under house arrest. People, they would barge into his house in the wee hours of the night and do random searches just to disturb the Imam. And finally they succeeded to poison him. Time is up, so I will conclude. The family of the Imams were either killed or jailed, or were forced to leave Medina and go far away. A lot of innocent blood was spilled so that we Shia today can sit in this masjid and listen to majalis and pray peacefully. One important question arises. Tell me, my brothers, the followers of which religion killed their leaders. One by one, all leaders, from the first Imam to the 11th Imam, were mercilessly, brutally martyred. What can be done apart from Ghayba? What can we do? The only solution for the 12th Imam to be safe was Ghayba. Our history is extremely painful. The Imams were forced to adopt secrecy and taqiyya in order to protect Islam and to protect the Imamah. They could not even name their successors openly. And people took advantage of this, and many divisions were formed. The Shia were under the threat of the Abbasid Khilafat, but they were also under the threat of the other deviant groups, as I mentioned. The next session, inshallah, will be on a brief biography of the 11th Imam, Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, and we will discuss the events leading to the birth of Al-Mahdi ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.